Hi, welcome back. My name is Sarah. I'm the designer behind Nepal's pattern, and today we're going to be doing a sew along for my newest pattern, the sail away dress. In this video, I'll be doing the tutorial for view 1, which is the one that I'm wearing right now, but there's also a tutorial for view 2, so if you need that, just go check out the channel and it should be there. Okay, so for this dress, I used a cotton gingham from Matchy Matchy Sewing Club, and for the lining, I used a viscose linen blend from Blackbird fabric. So as always, the choice of fabric here really impacts the end result or what it's gonna look like. So if you want something that's a bit more structured like this, go for cotton or linen. And if you want something that's a bit more flowy, drapey, go for viscose, shiny, rayon, something that has more drape to it. And then just a note for the girls. If you know, you know. So I find personally that view 1, which is this one, gives it a little bit more support for the girls because of the way the straps crosses here and then in the back. But both views of the pattern have adjustable straps for this purpose. Also, if you have a bigger chest, I recommend using for your lining something that's a bit more structured like cotton or linen. That's what I always do with these types of dresses, just because it gives more structure to the bodice and like it helps with the support. I find. Of course, it's not going to be like the most supportive dress, but if I'm comfortable wearing it out in public without a bra, I consider that like it passes my test, if you know what I mean. So that's just a little note for the girlies with bigger girlies. And then the last thing I want to mention is all the seam allowances in the patterns are 1.5 centimeter in all my patterns, unless it's mentioned. But I always sew with a 1 centimeter seam allowance, so I always like trim 0.5 centimeter of all the patterns that I personally use. So if during the tutorial you find that my seam allowance looks a bit thin, that's why. It doesn't change anything, it's just something to note. And yeah, I think that's it. So let's get into the voiceover. All right, the first thing we'll do is fold one end of the strap 1 centimeter to the wrong side and press. Next, fold the straps in half lengthwise and press. Then open the straps and fold the edges so they meet in the middle where the crease is and press well. When that's done, fold everything back up and press well so all the raw edges are hidden. Okay, so I like to make my straps partially elasticated because it helps support the girls and it also relieves a bit of the tension at the shoulders, but you don't have to do that if you don't want to. Anyway, to make the straps elasticated, stitch the folded edge from the end of the strap that isn't turned to the notch to create a channel. Cut your elastic according to the chart, and here it's really just a guide. You might need to adjust the length of your elastic to your preference. Once you have your elastic, insert it into the channel using a safety pin and make sure to stitch down the ends of the elastic to the strap to keep it in place. Stitch the rest of the strap edge to finish and set the straps aside for now. Moving on to the bodice, right sides together, stitch the side front to the center front, notch in the seam and press it open. Repeat for the other side and also for the lining. Right sides together, stitch the side back bodice to the center back bodice, notch in the seam and press it open. Repeat on the other side and also for the lining, but this time using the back lining piece. Then, stitch the front and back together at the side seam. Notch the seam and press it open. Repeat on the other side and for the lining. Next, stitch the straps to the bodice so they stay in place when we sew the lining to the main fabric. Alright, now with the main and linings right sides together, stitch all around the neckline and also at the back opening. Please note here that the lining piece is shorter at the center back. That's normal and that's where you should stop sewing. Then, notch in the seams, turn right side out and press. Here you can also understitch if you want, but I find that for this pattern, you can just press it really well and it does the job. Alright, the next step here is to finish the center back and to create a channel for the straps. So, fold and press the edge 1 centimeter to the wrong side, then fold it again, this time 1.5 centimeter to the wrong side and press. The second fold should align with where the lining ends. Next, stitch a folded edge down so it creates a channel. Then I like to base stitch the main fabric and lining together at the bottom. It just makes it easier when it comes to time to assemble the bodice to the skirt. Alright, now we're moving on to the skirt, and we'll start by folding the short ends of the skirt bias 1.5 centimeter to the wrong side. Once that's done, set it aside for now. Next, stitch the side front skirt to the center front skirts, right sides together. There is no lining for this skirt, so finish your seams however you like. In my case, I'm overlocking them. Once that's done, press the seam toward the side and then repeat for the other side. Right sides together, stitch the side back skirt to the center back skirt, finish the seam and press it towards the side, and then repeat for the other side. Then assemble your front and back skirt together at the side seams. Finish the seams and press them towards the back. Alright, so I like to do my hem now, but you can always wait until the end to do this step. Anyway, fold and press the hem 6 mm to the wrong side twice. Then stitch closely to the folded edge to finish. Alright, so because there's a dip in the center front skirt and we're going to stitch it to the pointed edge of the bodice, I like to make a basting stitch at the center front and clip the seam end to make assembling the skirt and the bodice together easier. So basically, I sew a line that's about 2.5 centimeter long on either side of the center with the same seam allowance that I'll use later for assembly. Then I clip in the seam. Next, let's make gathering stitches at the top of the skirt, except for in between the notches at the back. That's where the opening is. Like always, I like to use elastic thread in my bobbin to do that, but you can use whatever method you prefer, and there is an annex in the sewing instruction for my recommended gathering methods. Once the gathering stitches are done, it's time to stitch the bodice to the skirt. Now, I just want to make a disclaimer that the method I show here isn't the same as in the instructions. Basically, in this video, I sew the bodice inside the skirt, and in the instructions, the bodice is outside the skirt. This is purely preference-based. As long as the right side of the bodice is facing the right side of the skirt, you're good to go. Anyway, pin the bodice to the skirt. The back opening of the bodice should match the ungathered part of the skirt, and then the rest of the bodice has seams that match the skirt at the sides and at the front and back princess seams. Stitch together, paying close attention to when you get to the center front. Stitch over the basting stitch, keep your needle in, lift your presser foot, pivot your project, lower your presser foot, and keep sewing. Once the seam is done, finish the seam, and then we'll just continue from here. Now take your back bias and place it so it's right side together with the skirt, and the bodice is going to be sandwiched in between. Now note here that the bias should extend and overlap the edge of the bodice by 1.5 centimeter, and that's to relieve some of the tension caused by the elastic at the opening. Anyway, once that's all placed, stitch the bias to the skirt. Next, flip the bias so it's facing right side up, press well and top stitch it so it stays in place. Okay, so this is a bit weird to explain, but hopefully with the visual, it should be fine. Okay, so fold the bias over the seam allowances so it encases it, and then using the previous seam as a guide, flip the bias and the seam on the inside of the dress so it's not visible from the outside. Once that's done, stitch the bias to the dress to create a channel. Make sure to leave the ends open so we can insert the elastic here. Cut your elastic according to the chart, and once again here, this is really just a guide. You might need to adjust the length to your preference once you try the dress on. Once you have your elastic, insert it into the channel using a safety pin and make sure to stitch down the ends of the elastic to the dress to keep it in place. Lastly, turn everything right side out and press well. Then cross the strap across the back so they form an X and insert them into the channel using a safety pin. All right, tutorial's done, and this is the result. I'll pop over some images so you can get the full body view. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you love the pattern. I love this pattern so much. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Okay, bye.